Testing, sound testing. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to begin this debate session. But before that, I would like to request the AWARE team to make sure all of their participants are in the meeting as soon as possible.
Okay, please wait a minute.
I've been told that there is one person still missing from the AWARE team. So
We could just start. She will come in 1 minute.
okay, we'll wait for her then. Good morning, afternoon, or evening to ladies and gentlemen, depending on the part of the world you're watching this or being part of this event from. I am Ashad, and we are here in preliminary debates round of Pioneers 2071 conference to question the next 50 years. I will be adjudicating this debate session along with my assistant, Siwon Choi. Also on the adjudicating panel, we have very esteemed professors, Professor Byung-Ha Shin and Professor Do-Chung Lee. The scenario we will be discussing among ourselves would be global environmental change and innovative ways to address various issues rising due to this adverse environmental change. In today's first debate session, we have today's second debate session, sorry, we have three very capable teams, namely Aware, Herizo, and Planet Earth. The detailed rules of the debates have been explained earlier in the orientation to the participating teams already. But before we start the presentations and move on to the question and answer session, I'd like to gently remind the teams a few things. The purpose of today's debate, rather discussion, is not to discredit each other's ideas and undue criticism, but to have a constructive session to look for ways to address global issues the world community may face in the years to come. All of us are among the top elite of the world who have access to rich educational and academic resources, and we are all affiliated to top-ranked institutions across the world. It is our duty to the world as future leaders, innovators, intellectuals, and policymakers to guide the world, give our insight, and play our role where it is needed. Your performance in this debate will be judged on some broad criteria, which we were told in the opening ceremony by Dean. During the Q&A session, I would encourage all the participants to actively take part and ask critical questions, but bearing in mind to maintain the decorum and mutual respect in debate. At no point shall any participant raise questions with demeanors or use insulting remarks and slurs, and the respondent should also perceive and respond to questions politely and with respect. Undue criticism, disrespect, impoliteness, and overuse of language will be penalized. I wish all the participants best of luck and may the best team win. I'm personally excited to see the how the teams have been working hard for their original ideology and policies and innovative ideas to resolve the current agenda. So without further ado, I'd like to open the presentation session today, starting with Team Aware. You have 15 minutes to present your solution.
Okay,
Team
can you
Aware?
see my screen?
Yeah, there's also an announcement that I'd like to make. I like all of the participants to see the screen shared by Pioneers 2071 in the viewing options. Above in the viewing options, kindly switch to the screen shared by Pioneers 2071. Yeah, Team Aware, you can go on and start your presentation.
Okay, so hello everyone. We are from China. Though all our accomplishments and disappointments, what we have always been especially proud of is the exploration we possess for promoting environmental awareness. As the Chinese saying goes, when people are united, mountains will move. For Greenland, in the key stage of transformation, we plan to associate with authority, residents, and enterprises, help it harvest both economic growth and environmental. Here comes to the first part, ideal knowledge and introduction. When it comes to our Greenland's core value, people well-being is always the number one priority. For policymakers, they should consistently search for the balance between individual feelings and social governance. For innovators, they should take on extended producer responsibility and develop products with sustainable value. Though there are many phenomena that obey our values such as climate change or pollution, we still hold the belief we will achieve our three goals and four objectives through our. Then policy one, sustainable development, will be the organizing principle for meeting human development goals, aiming to restructure the economy, improve the environment and efficiency of resources usage, as well as promote harmony between human and nature. Firstly, we will upgrade the industrial structure and change the imbalance in regional development, making sure their resources are efficiently used and sustainable enough. Besides, forming a sound system of laws and a convenient platform for information sharing and decision making are equally important. All in all, we hope to establish an investment and trade policy system led by green products, technologies, and services, which means that policy should keep the abreast of time from all the dimensions.
Okay, it's now my part. According to the environmental data provided and based on the detailed data of economy, energy sources, carbon dioxide emissions, and concentrations, major air pollutants concentrations, we divided the history of Greenland into four main periods. Year 1960 to 1990 was agricultural society. The environment was the best in the world, almost no pollution. In the year 1990 to 2010, we called it a preparation period. It's the initial stage of industry. Greenland was building up its strength and waiting for breakout. Year 2010 to 2030 is the outburst period. The industry went into explosive growth, while carbon dioxide emissions increased dramatically, resulting in a significant increase in the annual average temperature. Concentrations of PM and other air pollutants also continued to rise. After 2030, Greenland had went into the industrial society. The industry developed steadily, but the pollution was still getting worse. By far, Greenland was facing serious environmental problems, including greenhouse effect, air pollution, rising sea level, reducing arable land, etc. Thus, we put forward four policies. Policy number two was go carbon neutral. We aim to assume environmental responsibility and conduct low carbon and circular development. Each region should put forward clear targets and develop implementation plans as well as supporting measures. We encourage key sectors such as energy and construction to develop special schemes and key industries such as steel, chemicals, and coal to put forward clear targets and develop specific action plans. Most important, develop and apply carbon dioxide removal technologies to reduce carbon dioxide emission ASAP. Next, accelerate the construction of the national carbon emission trading market system. Detailed information will be introduced in the next part. We expect to achieve peak carbon dioxide emissions by 2055 and offset emissions by 2060. Policy number three is afforestation. This is to provide a carbon neutral pathway. Forestry carbon sinks and to achieve integrated eco-economic social benefits. Also recover forest cover on deforested sites and degraded land in critical habitats. We will select tree and shrub species suitable for local revegetation and demonstrate appropriate revegetation strategies. What's more, develop matching methodology for certification of emission reduction from forestry sinks, establish a complete market operation model, and robust financing channels. Thanks to this policy, we may create jobs, develop a green economy, restore land degraded by climate change, and reduce poverty. Policy number four is discharge permit system. Discharge behavior of enterprises and other production operators and protect and improve the ecological environment. Emissions units should apply for an emission permit in accordance with the regulations. Those who have not obtained an emission permit are not allowed to discharge pollutants. The national environmental authorities are responsible for the unified supervision and management of emission permits nationwide. Local governments are responsible for the supervision and management of emission permits in their administrative regions. Policy number five is ecological red line. We aim to develop an orderly and coordinated layout of ecological, agricultural, urban, and other functional spaces by the evaluation of the carrying capacity of resources and the environment and the suitability of national land space development. Also rationalize the urban development boundary. Methods include give priority to areas of great importance for ecological functions, as well as areas of great ecological sensitivity and fragility. Establish and improve a unified information platform for land and realize information sharing among departments. By 2055, we expect complete the delineation and landing of the ecological red line. By 2060, form a scientific, moderate, and orderly spatial layout system for the national territory.
Greenland is now at a critical economic development stage. With the development of science and technology, the improvement of the degree of industrialization, and the increasing diversification of people's needs, the scale of the primary industry has been shrinking, while the scale of the secondary and tertiary industries has been expanding since 1916. The economic gap between Greenland and OECD countries has narrowed over the past 80 years. Tier 215, the secondary and tertiary industry, have become the lifeblood of Greenland's economy. At the same time, the manufacturing distribution of Greenland are much more fruitful as electronics became the largest manufacturing industry. Greenland is gradually getting rid of its status as an agricultural power and transforming into an industrial and service industry. which means more opportunities for economic development and more environmental problems. Thus, we call for future industry transformation from old driving force to new driving force. How to balance the relationship between economic development and environmental protection? Or is there a mechanism that can effectively manage the environment and drive the economic growth at the same time? How to deal with the dilemma that no significant reduction in carbon emission as well as the objective set by WHO protocol. Here is our idea proposal one, carbon trading platform. In the present situation of large amount of carbon dioxide emission, carbon dioxide emission is a new type of economic resources. It uses a market mechanism to be bought and sold as a financial tool like currency. We hope this platform can not only reduce the cost of emission reduction, but also make enterprises promote their knowledge and encourage research and study of low carbon technologies as well. Finally, achieve our object to promoting environmental awareness of the whole society. This is how our platform works. The government sets initial quotas for carbon dioxide emission rights for industrial enterprise. The carbon market sets the price of emission rights based on supply and demand. From an economic point of view, if the cost of carbon dioxide emission reduction is lower than the price of emission rights, an enterprise will take measures to reduce or stop carbon dioxide emissions and sell the saved emission rights in the carbon platform for profit. Enterprises whose emission reduction costs are higher than the price emission permits will buy them in the carbon market to meet their emission needs. If the demand for emission permits increases, the price of them rises above the cost of emission reduction for some enterprises. They will be encouraged to take measures to reduce emissions, thus achieving the goal of reducing carbon dioxide emissions. You may ask how to set the total carbon emission quotas. We choose to first allocate and later decide the total amount when the amount of quota determines the scarcity of quota and directly affects the price of quota in carbon market. First of all, the government should formulate a national quota allocation plan to clarify the quality of free allocation in which region and the quantity of emission quota reserved by the state. Secondly, each region will issue quotas free of charge to key emission units within its administrative region, and the remaining quotas will be used for paid allocation. Here is a procedure of carbon trading platform. First is construction, combine bottom-up and top-down two approaches. First of all, we select individual cities to pilot carbon trading. Bottom-up refers to experience and lesson learned from the pilot construction and operation of carbon emission trading, which provides a reference for the construction of the whole platform. Top-down means Greenland carbon emission trading rules must be unified at a national level, such as laws and regulations. Secondly, in the initial phase of quota implementation, the government issued free quotas. In the later stage, quotas auction is adopted, and the enterprises with less developed knowledge are protected. Thirdly, the power generation industry will be the breakthrough point at the initial stage of carbon platform construction because of its relatively single product and quota allocation. The second is that the industry is a big emitter, and if trading starts, it will bring about a huge scale of carbon platform trading. The government will first to industrial enterprises free of charge, and the remaining quota will be auctioned to the trading institution. Industrial enterprises can also buy the sale quota through the trading institution. Besides, the trading institution will manage the quotas and turn it into carbon financial products to enter the financial market and attract investment from individuals and institutions. Still, there are two main limitations we cannot ignore. Companies must hold carbon credits, resulting in poor circulation of carbon credits. And carbon credits may raise the barriers to market entry for related industry. Therefore, a carbon trading platform is not a completely free market. The government needs to carry out macroeconomic regulation and control according to the actual situation. The two economic policies, go carbon neutral and afforestation mentioned before, provide a political guarantee for the construction of the platform. Besides, policy 6, modern agriculture aims to high productivity and efficiency through information technology and modernization. in order to solve the problems of food shortage as well as achieving economic and ecological joint development. Policy 7. High standard market may the answer to a limitation 2. While pursuing high quality markets, we will strengthen regulation, provide assistance to developing companies, and then reduce corporate monopoly.
Okay, for the last part, due to the uncontrolled development for decades, people in Greenland and nearby countries are suffering from air pollution and climate change. The poor ecological environment of Greenland has greatly affected people's life and health, both physically and psychologically. Health is an inevitable requirement for the promotion of all-round human development and a basic condition for economic and social development. Achieving a long and healthy life for the nation is an important symbol of national prosperity, and national revitalization. So we propose three policies. Policy number 8 is Ecological Civilization Pilot Area. The aim is to conduct experiments on ecological system reform and finally form a replicable model. We hope to establish an eco-environmental governance mechanism and a modern regulatory system for ecological, environmental, and resource protection. Policy number 9 is extended producer responsibility. The aim is to promote the implementation of resource and environmental responsibility by producers and improve the overall competitiveness of products and the resource and environmental efficiency. Policy number 10 is Health 2060, aiming to prevent and reduce injuries and effective control ecological and social environmental risk factors affecting health and provide equitable access to a systematic continuum of health service to achieve a higher level of well-being. At the end of our presentation, I'd like to introduce our Aware app. This app includes detailed information of the quality of water, soil, and air, which connected to the national database. The app also has a reporting portal. Users can report to the government anytime, anywhere. It's a social networking software at the same time. Users can share their moment freely. Greenland's environmental protection industry is in its infancy. People suffer from the effects of environmental pollution, and their awareness of environmental protection is awakening. At this point, an environmental protection, also social app developed by the country must be welcomed by all the people who want to change this situation. The applications includes 1. Users can check real-time environmental data freely. 2. Users can report environmental problem via app to local government anytime, anywhere. The app can provide live advice and knowledge about environmental
Right.
protection to
Thanks.
users.
That lapses your time for presentation. I think the rest of the points, all the participants can read through.
Okay.
So thank you for
The,
presenting.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful ideas. And without further delay, I would like to invite the next team for their presentation, which is Cardizo. So you guys can go on and share your screen for the presentation. Thank you.
Is the presentation visible?
Yes, we can see the presentation.
All right. All right. So, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are. Adib Muhammad Islam. I am going to present our policies of Team Cardizo alongside my teammate Domenico Arya. So, next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so we here at Cardizo believe in a world, in a future without burning fossil fuel. And we believe we want to create a society where there's trust, there's integrity, and there's a sense of community within the people and the people running the country. Next slide. So these are some of the policies that we are presenting over here. So the first policy is the electrification So almost about 40% of the total energy that we are currently using right now is used to run our cars, is used to run our transportation system, and it's also used to run the heating, the cooking, and all the other essential stuff that we do in the residential and commercial sector. So if we were to, so right now we are using fossil fuel to power these sectors, which is contributing a lot of carbon footprint. It's emitting a lot of pollutants in the world, in the atmosphere. So if we were to electrify this entire sector, that's like 40% of the total pollution just gone. Other than that, like maybe not today, but sometime in the future, we can be sure that we will find a source of energy which is clean. So right now, if we were to electrify these two huge sectors, we can seamlessly integrate these sectors into the electric grid, which will be running on clean energy. Next slide, please. So the second policy that we want to talk about is that this incentivization of the fossil fuel industry and incentivizing new and clean energy development. So, okay, let me make this very clear. As long as fossil fuel is much more cheaper, we will never transition to clean energy. So what we're proposing right now is a dynamic carbon taxing system which will slowly increment the taxes on fossil fuel industry, and the tax that we collect from there can be used to develop and research clean energy. Next slide, please. So yeah, next slide, please. Okay, yeah. So policy 4 is about public advocacy and education for responsible energy use. So right now we know that a lot of energy is being wasted through everyday action that us everyday people are doing right now, because we are not aware of how we are wasting energy. That's why it's very important for us as a society to teach and educate people how to not waste energy. Other than that, we here Cardizo also believes in nuclear power, but we know that there's a stigma against nuclear power. Though those stigma are understandable, they're not based on statistic and facts. That's why we want to educate people on what nuclear power is so that we can make an informed decision as a society. Next slide, please. So the next slide is about standardization of nuclear power plant design. So right now, a big problem with nuclear power plants are that it's expensive to build. Like right now, like 10 so right now, it takes over 10 years to review a power plant and to make a power plant. That's a lot of time. We don't have that kind of time. Also, it's also very expensive because nuclear power plants are very custom made. So what if we were to standardize the whole procedure, like the core procedure, which would drastically reduce the cost and would also reduce the review time it takes? Because like, let me really state it again, we can propose a lot of stuff, but as long as we don't have clean energy, there's no hope for us. And right now, the only thing we know about is nuclear power. So standardization could help us to reduce the cost, and yeah, maybe we'll have a greener power. So the next policies will be presented by my teammate Dhamiko. Bro,
Yes, thank you, Adip. Yeah, my name is Damiko. We are from KAIST, and now let's talk about the agricultural revival. So, in the Grainland, we attempt to control and optimize the agricultural practices and parameters for increasing the crop yield. The parameters such as light, water, temperature. So this policy will try to incentivize the use of more renewable resources, and how we can do that is by subsidizing the agricultural farmers to construct their greenhouses named Kassen, a specialized glass house for growing crops, so they can cultivate the crops even faster. And through this cousin glass house, it's also found that the organic waste from the caisson can be collected and turned into some biogas and fertilizers through fermentation process instead of direct burning of biomass. This makes the carbon dioxide emission of the process much more environmentally friendly. Next, next, we will talk about how we can manage our the water problem that is present in the Greenland. So we plan to construct the dams to protect the country from rising sea levels. As we know, it's one of the big problems in Greenland. So in order to reclaim the submerged land that once was used a long time ago for agriculture, dams should be constructed in the ocean on the level of the former border, as you can see in the picture here. The water in the artificial lakes can be used as a freshwater reservoir or the water for emergencies. Uh, Also, in order to protect our people from casualties from the drowning natural disaster, uh, then swimming will be a mandatory subject in our and the students' curriculum in their elementary school. Next, we want to tackle the problem which is occurred by the rising temperature. People of Greenland use a lot of energy, especially indoors, to power their AC. So because the temperature is so hot, right? And then one way we can do this is we can subsidize the solar panel to cover the electricity need of AC in summer season. As you can see in the graph here, it is really important we tackle this issue because the person is growing bigger and bigger. And also, as we have lived under the COVID situation where we are forced to live indoor, uh, air quality is air quality indoor is also important. So improving the air pureness indoors by the use of renewable energy sources, such as a plant, certain plants which can filter out the fine dust from the rooms. Next, uh, let's come back to ourselves. Humane policies. We know that the problem in Greenland is very complicated issue with such extreme temperature and worsening quality. This might reduce the life happiness of people, which we have to take care into account. Citizens are forced to spend most of their time indoors, and how can we when we humanitize them, so in this problem we try to accomplish a welfare association where we can provide more ways for people to socially engage in the activities such as movie nights, meals, sports, or any get-together events. So promotion of physical activities indoors also will improve the physical conditions and being of the citizens. In this kind of regular meetings, it also provide means for the government to check the people's health regularly so that help can be given on time. Next, uh, the, the next problem that we would like to tackle is in the same direction of incentivizing the renewable energy, which is we have to standardize the carbon measuring and reduction methods to promote green business practices. So we will try to implement AI, which will be explained in the later slides. Recommendations where we can tackle the crisis that Greenland face. Adib.
Okay. So as you guys might have seen so far, we are quite pro-nuclear, and all the issues that we have about nuclear energy, for example, nuclear waste, and then the safety issues, most of the stuff can be uh, can be addressed through new generation nuclear power plant nuclear reactor design, and one of them is the thorium molten salt nuclear reactor. there's a lot of research going on, and if you guys read through our working solution, you might get an idea about it. So basically, it just eliminates all the issues that we have with the current nuclear power plant. I will give Miko the rest of the time to talk about the rest.
Okay, so let's now talk about the the second innovation, which is our green transportation. So this second innovation is achieved by incorporating hydrogen-based fuel in the already existing fossil fuel-based transportation system. So we can do this in two phases. The first phase is the short-term phase, when we will mix the fossil fuel with hydrogen to increase the calorific value of the fuel, while lowering its carbon emission at the same time. So this will be helpful to minimize the cost of transportation switching, while Greenland works on the other policies. In the long term, we plan to create a hydrogen-based long-haul transportation economy. Although this is not carbon neutral, the efficiency can be regulated much better than at the production itself. Next. Um, our third innovation is centered around green business, giving new business ideas to maintain green class economy while addressing its environmental issues at the same time. I know that we have talked about this so much. The main policy that we have is normally taxation, imposing certain restrictions, but come on, we have to be realistic to account for the economic growth, to account for the employment, and so we have to take into account how we can develop we can improve the economic growth and economic development at the same time. So these prominent examples, these three prominent examples, such as in oyster cultivation, but plant air purifier and AI consultancy will solve these. So the first is plant air purifier. The first is oyster cultivation, and we did background research where it is where an adult water per day, which is very useful for our natural water filter and healthy source of food. And then uh, uh, plant air purifiers can be planted, which is much more environmentally friendly than electric air purifiers. And last but not the but probably one of the most important things here is AI consultancy, where we leverage all the IoT. IoT is Internet of Things, which collect the data of all the sensors, such as like acidity, the carbon emission in each company, the carbon level, the acidity level into account. So we leverage all this data, all these analytics, and then we use some AI models to predict, to account for risk factor analysis, future trends, and so on, to predict to for us, for the government or business to adopt environmentally conscious strategies in the sustainable development direction. So this consultancy can be used by all instances which might be either looking in investing in the sustainable energy field and so on. So this AI consultancy enables our future systems to be more productive for the economy and for the future. And that concludes our policies, ideology, policies, and innovations of the Cardizo. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cardizio, for finishing up your presentation in time. You had some wonderful ideas and some unique insight as to how what an alternate energy source should look like. Um, I would like to move on to the last presentation for this debate session, and after which we will start our question answer session. So the stage goes to the team Planet Earth.
Okay, give me 1 second.
Yeah, please take your time, but make it quick.
Sorry, our speaker is the other Felicia.
I would still again request every participant to go to the view options and view the screen shared by 2071, Pioneers 2071.
Sorry, can you not see my screen for now? It's on the presentation.
Yeah, there is an issue. Yeah, it's better now.
Okay, I'm gonna. Is everything good? Okay. Okay.
You may start your presentation.
Okay, hello everyone. We're from Team Planet Earth, and we're here to present our solutions to basically save Greenland, a nation in flames. So we've come to the conclusion that with the issue of climate change, it encapsulates almost every single aspect of Greenland, may it be from health, economics, to a lot of other aspects, which is why a lot of our policies will be covering solutions to a lot of problems covered in this scenario. Next slide, please. Okay, first of all, health. We understand that we need to prioritize basically the health and well-being of Greenland citizens, because the change in climate has impacted their health like significantly. And a lot of our health policies are going to involve more about education with the means of prevention, because there's a saying in the medical industry that it's better to prevent than to treat. So with issues like respiratory problems caused by the air pollution, the main idea is to basically educate people on the dangers of going outside and breathing in the polluted air. We're going to be educating them on how important it is to use face coverings when they're going outside, and the dangers of said face coverings, because it's said in the scenario that the gas mask industry is pretty big in Greenland now. Everyone needs to use a gas mask when they're going outside, which is, well, it's a good thing because the gas mask helps filter out the air pollution. But at the same time, those gas masks can exacerbate pre-existing respiratory problems. So technically, the best option for curbing respiratory problems is to encourage people to stay inside as much as they can, like stay indoors. But if they do have to go outside, it's necessary for them to use gas mask. And yeah, there's also the issue of tropical infections that that have risen because of the tropical climate that Greenland now has. So with tropical infections, there fever and malaria usually spread from mosquitoes, and it's really not that big of a deal. There's a huge stigma on what dengue fever and malaria is. The key to solving this problem, again, is prevention. People need to be educated on how to spot symptoms so that they can bring themselves to the hospitals before the sickness gets worse. And they also need to be educated on prevention as in they need to learn how to reduce mosquito breeding grounds, because that's how the virus gets spread around, right? So we're going to be teaching people to basically cover bodies of water around their homes, to regularly clean places where they store water so as it doesn't become a mosquito breeding ground, and to basically dispose of items that are not necessary in their homes, because those can also be mosquito breeding grounds. Next slide, please. There's also the issue of malnutrition because of the food crisis in Greenland. So the best way to solve this is to educate citizens on the benefits of a plant-based diet, because it does cover a person's nutritional needs, and it's also better for the environment to adopt a plant-based diet. And for their diets to consist more of staple foods like grains and starch to lower their dietary spending and promoting a healthier diet. There's also the issues on pregnancies, because if we're encouraging people to stay indoors more often, usually pregnancy numbers surge, and it's less than ideal because the conditions around Greenland today isn't exactly the best environment for people to raise kids. So Planned Parenthood campaigns will be launched to reduce the number of pregnancies during these tumultuous times, and contraceptive devices are encouraged. There's also the issue of deteriorating mental health. So how we're going to solve this is by establishing a national crisis hotline. It's not just about like preventing suicide. It's basically anyone who's in a mental crisis, who's having an anxiety attack, or who just feels like they need someone to talk to. There's going to be a national hotline with trained psychiatrists on the call 24/7, so that anyone and there will be campaigns on the normalization of seeking psychological help, so it gets rid of the stigma. There will also be group therapy programs that will be provided by the Ministry of Health, because it's shown that some people mentally improve better if they know that there are others out there who are experiencing the same thing as they are, which is why group therapy programs help. And it also provides a space for people who say can't afford or is still too scared to try one-on-one therapy. Next slide, please. So natural disaster management. Because of the various climate changes, Greenland has quite a lot of number of disaster-prone areas. And our priority is basically lowering down the mortality rates caused by natural disasters. How we're going to do that is by creating crisis centers that we're going to build in areas prone to floods, landslides, and forest fires. It's to maximize efficiency, because when you've got natural disasters happening in one area and a crisis center or a hospital that's probably in another area far from these natural disaster prone areas, it takes a lot of time for us to bring victims the help that they need. So having crisis centers dead in the middle of like disaster prone areas, it's a lot better, because victims will get the necessary help that they need a lot faster. These crisis centers will be equipped with medical personnel who's trained on dealing with natural disaster injuries, and it will also be equipped with the necessary equipment like gurneys, bandages, first aid kits, etc. An Amber Alert system will also be implemented so that people in these disaster-prone areas will be alerted of an oncoming natural disaster, and therefore will have time to evacuate before anything bad happens to them. The socialization on owning emergency bags is also necessary, so that in case that these people aren't able to go back to their homes because it was ruined by the natural disaster, um, they will have emergency bags to help them survive. Next slide, please. Then there's food. Food is a very important aspect of people's lives. So the aim of food policy is basically to provide people with the also to create sustainable food systems in the future, so that the food crisis in Greenland can be curbed. We're introducing a Bureau of Logistics so that farmers will be able to enter the markets without having to lower their prices to cater to like big corporations. We're going to ensure like balanced food by socialization of proper dietary needs, so on and so forth. Next slide, please. So with the economy, the aim of the economy is to create methods to fund for the big transformations in grainlands industries. So we have a lot of programs like Grainland and funding Grainland's renewable energy programs. Feeding Grainland will cover the funding for its agriculture reform and the food policies that I mentioned before. And funding Grainland aims to create policies that encourage investment in Grainland's energy projects, namely making CSR a much bigger thing for corporations that do emit a lot of pollutions. We're making it a requirement so that a lot of money is being allocated into the renewable energy programs, and we're making FDI a bigger thing so as to increase investment. We're also going to put heavy tax on environmentally hostile products like private vehicles, vehicle fuel, and tobacco. We're going to put like a 30% tax so as to lower down its consumption. And on fossil fuels and minerals, we're going to heavily regulate the production of these commodities so that it'll be limited to domestic need only. We're not going to be exporting any fossil fuels and minerals because mining itself already releases harmful pollutants into the air. So it's only going to be for like what Grainland needs. And import tariffs will be put for electronic goods so as to boost local Grainland electronic industry. Moving forward. Next slide, please. With the Conservation Act, we're going to be building a lot of conservation parks. We're preserving the last remaining important ecosystems inside Grainland. 30% will be open to the public so that people can immerse themselves in nature and learn about like Grainland's nature whenever they can. But the remaining 70% will be closed off strictly for research and conservation purposes only. And the 1, 2, 3 program will be introduced to bring back Grainland's forest back to its prime. So the way is that for companies that are in the logging industry, for every tree that they cut, they need to plant another 2 trees. Next slide, please.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. We're going to move on to agriculture. So we're going to have 3 policies under this program. The first one is the Organic Farmer Training Committee, where we will be educating farmers on organic farming methods, including crop rotation and multiple cropping. And they will be led by scientists and organic farmers and plant biologists. And there will be incentives offered to these people, like stipends, so that they would actually complete the program. And it's going to be a long, gradual shift. Second one is a healthy commodity team. So we will want to encourage farmers to plant nutritious crops. And we also want them to shift from livestock production to cropland so that we can increase food production in a very healthy way. And we will provide cash incentives to do so and loans as well. And then the third one is community gardens using hydroponic system. So we will be subsidizing the cost of installing a hydroponic systems and establish a monthly subscription that allow access to crop grown in the garden. And they will be placed in low-income neighborhoods and in food deserts where it is hard to access fresh produce. We're also encouraging people to build their own hydroponic gardens at home. Next is on energy. So we want to introduce a microalgae cultivation project 2050, where we will be using microalgae instead of traditional plant-based biodiesel. And why? Well, the first one, it's a zero net carbon dioxide, so no carbon is produced. They also produce twice as much energy as terrestrial plants, and they don't need land for production because they can be grown in waste and places in high salinity. They're also cost effective, as you can see at the right bottom of the screen. That's the cost. So government will start independent projects, and then companies with a red pollution alert, they're going to have to adopt the program as well. Next, on foreign policy. So what we plan to do is that we plan to propose a new Dutch protocol. We will we will abide to the Diligent Protocol as long as we have a say in it, and we're going to propose a new goal that is 15% in about 10 years. So that's going to represent not only our circumstances, but also the circumstances of all developing countries. We're also going to propose a treaty of cooperation on research and development, a treaty on economic aid, propose a joint international food trade, and fight investment from other countries on clean development energy programs. Our climate change policy is basically a reiteration of some of the policies that we had, but we're just going to commit to them. So like carbon emission, clean development mechanism energy, and commit to the development of clean renewable energy. So for our two innovations, we have the first one is Safe to be Safe campaign, where we will be mobilizing a grassroots effort to conserve energy in homes and offices. Challenge is to challenge the public to lower their monthly home or office electricity use. And we're going to ask celebs and influencers to kickstart the challenge. And we're going to ask those who have succeeded to then put a sign at their apartment, home, or office door detailing how much electricity use they have lowered in that month. The point is to make the conversation of energy conservation salient and intrusive, and along with producing engaging PSAs and intensive local media outreach. And for the last,
time.
okay, so this one is a food village charity, practically.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
30 seconds.
So the goal is to reduce food waste and tackle insecurity, tackle rocketing food prices, and also, of course, facilitating the F&B industry to take part in helping Greenland tackle food insecurity. So we will have an app where we connect us with these companies, especially with hotels, restaurant, cafes, and bakeries, because they might need to update their stock daily. And then we, along with some volunteers, we will be distributing the food to people in need, basically. So I think that concludes our innovation and solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your ideas with us today. And this concludes the presentation part of this session. And we will be having a 10 minutes break in which the teams can deliberate among each other and prepare questions for their teams. And after 10 minutes, we will continue the question answer session of this debate. So esteemed participants, now we'll be starting our Q&A session. And I would like to start this question answer session. Before I start this question answer session, I have just quickly want to remind all the participants that if they want to ask any other participating team a question, they are supposed to write Q in the chat. And the esteemed professors, if they want to ask a question, they can unmute themselves and ask it directly once the responder has spoken, or they can also write Q in the chat and their questions will be prioritized. So let's start this question answer session. My first question would be to team Planet Earth. And I would like to ask them a fundamental question. They started their presentation with their health initiatives and their health program, which was very elaborate. But I think there is a root cause for detrimental health of people of Greenland. And that root cause is carbon emission, which caused global warming and health issues. So if the root cause is not removed, it doesn't matter how many health initiatives or health acts are implemented, the people will still keep on suffering, and the health act will not itself be sustainable because it will need continuous funding by the government. So what are your plan or strategy to address that root cause?
Okay, so may I answer that question?
Yes, please.
So we have big plans for reforming Greenland's energy industry, starting with the proposed plan that Felicia talked about before, which is microalgae biofuel. We're going to be introducing it like stage by stage. So we're going to start first by using microalgae as a 50% substitute to fossil fuels, so that um, and as we know, microalgae doesn't emit carbon dioxide, so it's going to lower down a lot of the carbon emissions being put out by long haul transportations or just like fuel vehicles in general. In the long run, uh, after that, we also like after the um, after the 50% change in fossil fuels, we also mentioned about um, potentially completely stopping our dependence on both fossil fuels and minerals like coal. Like currently, we can't exactly change the whole energy industry overnight. So the first step we're going to take is, like we said, regulating the mining activities for fossil fuels and minerals to just our domestic need, so that we're not like importing any of the mineral and fossil fuels commodity, so that it reduces production, therefore reduces emissions let out to the air. And slowly from there, once the renewable energy programs um, are already funded and we're able to use microalgae at a bigger scale, more than just substituting 50% of fossil fuels, we'll be able to cut down, like we'll be able to stop all mining activities on minerals and fossil fuels, and therefore curb the air pollution in Greenland. By then, people will be able to go outside, will be able to breathe cleaner air. But in the meantime, the Health Act is necessary, so that right now, like, we can't stop people from breathing at all. So right now, they still have to go outside, they still have to go on with their usual activities. So we have no choice but to come up with like a more immediate solution through the Health Act. But in the long run, like we have policies.
All right. Thank you for your answer. And I see Professor Dojang Lee has a question.
Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for your first answer to the question. I'd like to piggyback on that question by saying that if you would like to reduce the use of fossil fuels and coal, it's all fine in an ideal world, but the problem is that you'll have to have energy source to replace it. And I think you mentioned biofuels, but how would you scale up the production of biofuel in the scale of fossil fuels and the use of coals? Can you comment on that?
Okay. Can I answer? May I answer this? Hello?
Yes, please go on.
Okay. So scaling up will always be a problem, will always be an endless race. So what we're going to start with is we're going to start with laboratory scale work. And it has been proven since years ago, like because our end goal is to replace biofuels. Our end goal is to replace fuels with biofuels. And we have seen, like even back in 2009, that cars have been running on microalgae fuel. And in the long run, we expect that we need biofuel, which is like 100% microalgae. And this is a step-by-step process. We have started with 5%, we have started with 20%, and in the long run, we will expect it to be at 100%. And about scaling up, we have mentioned about two methods. First is the BBR, so the photobioreactors. And second, we have also proposed the open raceway ponds. So from these two methods, scale up will be possible. Thank you.
Okay, Professor Byung-Shin has a question.
Yeah, first of all, I really enjoyed all the presentations. So I have two questions, one for planet Earth and the other for Cordizio. So in the report, it is stated that as a part of economic policy, you propose to increase tax of imported electronic goods by 20%. And this imposing of a high tariff, isn't this like some sort of violation of international trading? And possibly would it raise a conflict with other countries?
Professor, this question is meant for planet Earth.
Yeah, planet Earth.
Yeah. Planet Earth, please respond.
I think Fiodira can take that question.
For that, I think we forgot about that international trade rule. So I think we missed that part. So yeah.
I wouldn't say that we missed that part because it really depends on which trade agreements Greenland is currently a part of, which countries they're working together with. Under the assumption that Greenland isn't part of any of the major trade agreements, I feel like it's a possible solution to trying to boost its local electronics industry. We're taking an example from USA, for example, where they basically raised the tariffs for importing electronic goods and electronics industry. So that's what we're aiming for.
Yeah, but they caused a conflict between China and other countries. So, okay, my next question is for Cordizio. This is a trivial question. So I like the suggestion of oyster farming, this very cute proposal. Do you know how costly it is to farm oysters?
Team Cordizio, please respond.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
Thank you, Professor, for your question. So, for looking at the oyster farming itself, we were thinking about having two-phase solution. Like some kind of policies are definitely needed to subsidize the the farming cost, because I did some cost analysis from the Indian perspective, and the cost is not as much, but depending upon the place, it will vary for sure. But having a policy simultaneously, as we discussed earlier with the agricultural policies, I think that can be substituted and it can be worked through, which can be a two-faced solution to the sustainability and the food problem faced by Cardizo, faced by Greenland.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to add on to that.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So even if there are huge setup costs for the business, in the long run, we believe if the oyster farming can sustain up to a level, to a certain level, the costs can be spread out and the country can enjoy economies of scale. Even if there are huge setup costs, in the long run, we believe that it will be a fruitful environmental venture.
Or maybe you can export oysters to like America, where oysters are very expensive.
Yeah, that also works. Yeah.
Before I start my next question with Team Cardizio, I'd like to take Shoris' question. Which team do you want to ask a question, Shoris?
I have the question to Team Aware.
Team Aware, do you accept the question?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, go on, Shoris.
So one of your solutions was the permit trading system, if I'm not wrong, and the trading system works like if a company has more permits than what their emissions are, they can sell it to the companies that have more emissions than permits, right? So technically, it can be taken as a cost for businesses to run their operations. What My question is, what is stopping the businesses to transfer these costs to the consumers or to the people and incentivize them to reduce their carbon emissions at all? And even if you plan to put a cap on the permits that is given to all the businesses, what is stopping all the businesses to form a union or a monopoly per se to retaliate back?
Yes, for our carbon emission trading platform, we plan to focus on also on the operation and the management. So we need to uh, set some principle like the national management, and we will have uh, take some solid measures to control this. And for the big companies, we will make some restrictions for them. And for the small and middle enterprises, have more uh, we may have more benefits for them to make them innovate their products. I don't know whether this answer your question.
Okay, thank you for answering. If anyone wants to add anything on the answer, or we can move on to the next question. All right, my next question would be Team Cardizio. I'd like to talk on a few things to them regarding one of the slides showed that 40% energy is being consumed by residential and transport sector. And I would like to know the source behind this information because I believe that most of the energy is being consumed by the industrial sector and the residential sector accounts for less than that percentage. But the main question coming back to is carbon taxing. The goal written in your solution here is to make fossil fuel more expensive, which is also on the slides, more expensive than renewable. And if you look at the data given, the renewable sources of energy like wind and biodiesel, they are almost twice tariff-based. Their levelized cost of energy are almost twice than the carbon fuel. So having this big gap and then setting a goal to make fossil fuel more expensive, how is this achievable and on what timeline?
Thank you, Ashad, for the question. So regarding the 40% statistic, it was taken from the the U.S. Department of Energy. I will send you the link a little later on. But yeah, 40% as in like the 28 to 29% was uh, 16% was like a 35 to 40% is a huge amount that we want to eliminate nonetheless. And regarding your second question about fossil fuel, like how are we going to make clean? Uh, can you hear me properly?
Adib, your answer voice was a little mushy, but now it's better.
Okay. So yeah, the 40% statistic was taken from the U.S. Department of Energy. I can send you the link later on. And you are right. A large portion of the pollution is by the industry, but still at 28 to 29% from. Am I still breaking up? I'm sorry about.
Yeah, we can hear you, and we got the answer for that part. Can you answer the part regarding the goal to make fossil fuel more expensive than renewable? How is that, and
Okay,
what
yeah.
timeline?
Mm. So regarding that, uh, what we like, even like we believe that the current systems that we have like solar and wind, they're quite expensive, and according to the statistic, nuclear currently at the current moment is also very expensive. So if you were to go through the working solution that I've given for the thorium nuclear power plant, according to a few research study which I have uh, molten salt reactors are quite compact and modular in nature, and through the cost of it can be reduced to about $60, which is approximately close to the fossil fuel price. I hope that answers the question. All right.
Okay, thank you, Adib, for your answer. And now I would like to take a question from Felicia Vulnari from Planet Earth. What team would you like to ask question, Felicia?
I'd like to direct this question to Team Aware. Is
Team
that
Aware. Team Aware, would you like to entertain the question?
Yes.
All right.
okay?
Go ahead.
So I'd like to go back to the topic of your carbon trading system. We noticed that this is very similar to the cap and trade industry, which is happening in real life. And there's a couple of questions, issues that we notice with the system. First one is that by nature, the market itself is kind of questionable. The people who came up with the idea are not actually environmentalists. The people who came up with the idea of this kind of carbon market, it's Enron, an energy trading system, and also Goldman Sachs, which is, as you know, thing. And there's some things in the details that we would like to draw your attention to. The first one is that how are you going to make sure that people or companies do not cheat the system? Because it is very hard to sort of make sure they're staying truthful about the claim. So like how much carbon they are reducing. We have a lot of companies that are currently cheating this kind of system, including one company in Indonesia called Sinarmas. Also, another thing we'd like to ask is,
Felicia, I'm sorry to intervene, but can you summarize your question? Because we have many questions and we have limited time for this session, and we have only 3 minutes to respond. So your question should take less than a minute to.
okay, then that's a question I'm gonna give to Aware for now.
Okay, Team
Okay,
Aware is your answer.
for what you said about if there is not so transparent in our trending process, I said it's also good for us to have a department in our government to have a look on this issue, and we may build a platform for the carbon trading, and we can make our information and the changing process transparent. So everyone could look at it. So the public can also uh, supervise this process.
Sorry, could I speak again, or am I not allowed to speak?
I'd like to move on to the next question to Aware, and then I would take more questions from the participating teams or the professors. My next question to Team Aware would be, um, in your proposed solution and in your presentation today, there was no mention of an alternate energy source that could be explored to compensate for the enormous use of fossil fuel for energy needs of Greenland. And human well-being was being discussed, and I think human well-being is based on two factors: the economic well-being and the medical well-being. So we have many initiatives and ideas for medical well-being, but for the economic well-being we need industrialization, we need economic growth, and for that we need energy, and for that we need an alternate energy source which is cleaner than fossil fuel. So what are your thoughts on this, having to explore an alternate energy source?
Yes, for our Greenland, we also emphasize on the energy transition. When we thinking about, we find if without the experiment, we can know which kind of energy is best for Greenland. So we may do something like a pilot in one city, and uh, we can first control the current situation and then uh, take on some new clean energy. And actually, I have some thoughts on the uh, water electricity, because when we build a reservoir in some area, we can also uh, generate electricity from it. But sure, we haven't write it in our writing solution.
All right, can I move on to the next question? We're going to take a question from Aware. Sheng, which team do you want to ask question?
Yes, I'd like to ask KRD, Team KRD.
Cardizo?
Yes.
Team Cardizo, do you want to entertain the question? Team Cardizo,
Yes,
you have a
sure.
question?
Yes,
Do you want to
please.
take it?
Yes, please.
All right, Sheng.
Okay, I'm very interested in your policies about nuclear power. And the first question is, where is the technologies of nuclear power from? As far as I know, Greenland is in the initial stage of environmental protection, and I think their technologies about nuclear power is very short. And uh, another question is, where would you build nuclear power reactors? Because the residents will be fear of the nuclear power plant. So that's my question.
All right, so I would like to answer the question. First of all, thank you for your question. And the question you just asked about where the technology is coming from. So basically, the country itself is a developed country, so it must be having trade partnership. Even if it doesn't have the technology by himself, through the trade partnership, it can leverage upon those technologies. How other countries also do that. For example, Samsung in India, Samsung in South Korea also makes a power plant back in other countries. That's how they call it the export of technology, and they are doing it currently. So I hope that answered the question about the technology. And now coming about the question about the safety and everything. So one of the issues in the nuclear power plant is project financing. So what we are looking at is financing the project in a public manner, of Greenland will have equity stocks in the building of the power plant itself, so that they feel a sense of belonging for that power plant, which can create a positive image in the society and thereby have a positive impact in the society. And in general, nuclear power plants are not as evil as it thought to be. but there are few incidents happen in the uranium power plant which are causing this kind of negative impact. That's why we are switching to thorium power plant, which are much more safer and less risky than the current solutions. I hope it answers your question.
All right, thank you for your answer, Shiban. I'd like to take a question from Team Credizio, Shian.
Yes, I have a question for Team Aware.
All right, Team Aware, do you want to take this question?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I really like the idea of afforestation, like giving back to nature.
Shan,
However,
could you
I
speak a
am
little
here.
louder? Please repeat the
Can't you hear?
question a little louder.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now it's better.
Okay. So I'm curious, how are you planning to realize afforestation with the problems of drought and forest fires? And where will the trees be planted? Because trees deplete water from the soil that is already dry and not viable for the plants. Like we lack fresh water and soil, and moreover, danger for forest fires increases when more trees are planted.
Yes, maybe I will answer the question in two parts. In some urban areas, we may have, when we develop the city or uh, re rebuild the city city pipes, we can uh, we can add some new technologies. We can divide the rainstorm and the wastewater. So the rainstorm will be directly put in the river, and we also need to do some work on the prevention of such flooding things, because we will need extra department or extra people to extra helpers for this issue for the safety security of our people. And in the rural areas, I know they are more fortunate, so we may um, we may at first give them more funding on the construction, and we may teach them some knowledge from such things, from the flooding and how to protect themselves.
All right, thank you for your answer. And now I'd like to ask a question to Team Credizio. Uh, Policy number 5, which you explained in your presentation as well as your written solution, it says standardization of nuclear power plant. And for the record, I'd like to bring you to notice that such standardization already exists. And there's a association, it's called World Association of Nuclear Operators, WANO. And they're basically a watchdog on all the countries who are operating nuclear power plants. And they see that if they have standards set to meet the safety requirements. For a developing country as Greenland, which has very little renewable energy sources and which is recently gaining prosperity economically, is it feasible to, on what timeline is it feasible for them to establish such a scheme to get approval from those such world agencies to develop their nuclear program and install their molten salt reactors?
Can I answer the question?
Yes, please.
So, talking about the VANO, the organization, so they are the reactors we are currently using are different from the one we are talking in general. The uranium reactors are the big reactors. What we are using right now, what we are proposing are the modular reactors, which are smaller compared to the big ones, and they can be installed in like more quantity and less power intensive, so they can escape upon that issue. So we didn't like particularly think about the time frame because it's highly variable and we need to know about the economic state of the world itself, the economic policies, the policies which tackle about the world around it. We don't have any idea about how the partnership with the other countries works. So we are not cannot comment about that with the information. But at the same time, I think for comparing with other countries, I think it is highly possible to make this happen as economy of scale for a nuclear power plant can be of 6 years to 7 years. So in this time frame, you can go from a carbon emitting source, which is coal based, to a zero emission, which I think is feasible and it's good for the environment itself.
I would also, if I'm allowed, I'd like to add a point to that.
Yes, please.
Um, so, um, so yeah, I agree with you that there are standards right now, but those standards are about the safety standards. What I'm trying to talk about is to standardize the whole design process, what we're basically doing for the automobile industry. Standardizing the design process would greatly reduce the licensing cost, would reduce the reviewing time. So right now there's a multinational organization called MDEP working on the safety measures. What we are trying to say is that Greenland will work with all of these countries to come up with the standardized design from one power plant. That would greatly reduce the time taken and the cost for making a power plant. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you for your answer. And now I'd like to take a question from Team Credizio. Uh, Sheban, what would you like to ask and whom would you like to ask?
So I have a question for Planet Earth.
Okay, Planet Earth, you have a question. Do you want to take it?
Yes.
All right, Sheban, go ahead.
So a sharp decline in the birth rate often has a detrimental effect on creating an inverted population pyramid where resources are strained as a reduced working population needs to take care of largely dependent population. So how is Planet Earth plan around long-term consequences of it?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
So, like, as you're talking about the declining birth rate, like, right, and like they had a detrimental effect on creating inverted population pyramid, where the resources are constrained, right? So, how is Planet Earth is planning to come around this long-term consequences? Did you get my question?
Yeah. Uh, Sorry about that. You got cut off, but I got the question. So, uh, yes, there is a chances of declining birth rate, but right now, if we look at like overall world trend, overpopulation is starting to become a huge problem, and we're basically promoting more on the idea of like safe sex and more about controlling birth numbers rather than like continually reducing its numbers. We're most worried about how if people continue uh, if people continue reproducing at its current rate, and we also mentioned that there's a very large chance that the reproduction rate can increase because we're encouraging people to stay indoors as often as possible because staying outdoors isn't healthy for their respiratory system. If birth rates keep on increasing, like we said, right now in Greenland, the environment isn't isn't good for people to be raising children. So uh, higher reproduction rates means also higher infant mortality rates, also higher stunting rates because of the food crisis, and kids with more respiratory symptoms. So we're really thinking about like the long term. We're trying to save future kids from having these like stunting once things start to get better, once air pollution goes down, once things starts to change, birth rates should go back to normal because um, through research, I feel like that's the human nature. Did that answer your question?
I have a follow up.
Uh, we'd like to move on, and I would like to ask a question to Team Planet Earth. Um, One of the propositions that were given in your written solution, it pertains to policy number 2, I guess. It's reallocating land from livestock to farm. My particular question regarding this is this a good idea given the scenario that the livestock yield is already diminishing and the price of meat has skyrocketed, which is written in the scenario. So reallocating land from livestock to farm will further exacerbate that situation. and cause the meat products to be even more pricier for the general public?
Yes, I can answer that. So I believe that Greenland is going through high greenhouse gas emissions. And actually, the livestock sector takes about 14% of total greenhouse gas emissions. And I feel like because we do want to reduce as much greenhouse gas emissions as possible, that is one option we can think of. And not to mention that we are losing a lot of land that can a lot of land used for livestock production, like to grow their food, can be used for people instead. And considering that they're going through food insecurity, I think it makes sense. And um, like we did talk about trying to curb the demand for meat through education and teaching them how to eat better, more nutritious meals. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, you can
Sorry.
add to that. You still have 1 minute and a half.
Okay. Adding to what Brittany said, a successful campaign like this can actually be done to sort of encourage people to lessen the meat intake in their diets. It's been done in America back then. The idea of meatless Mondays actually come from them. So at times of urgency, I think we can persuade people to be more, you know, they're encouraged more to eat less meat and more vegetables, considering how situations are in Greenland. So yes, a solution to this is to conduct a campaign, teach people, encourage people to eat less meat. Food are rising when it comes to meat. Food prices are rising when it comes to meat. We can also help diminish that problem by encouraging less demand. So yes.
Okay, thank you for answering, Felicia. And I would like to take your question. You had something to ask?
Oh, it's the other Felicia, I think.
Yeah, okay. So thank you. I would like to address the question to Team Cardizo.
Mhm. Team Cardizo, you have a question?
Yes,
Team
please go on.
Cardizo?
All right, thank you. So very interesting policies that you have. So what we went through it, we noticed that you're proposing very large scale infrastructure changes. So you want to roll out the smart meters, you want to build dams, you want to build water reservoirs and a nuclear plantation. So my question is, where do you plan to get the funding for this? And will you be able to finish these changes and yield results by the 10-year deadline? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So, as you just talk about the economy, and I just mentioned earlier about having project financing done through equity of the population themselves. So, there can be two methods of financing. Either we go through the policies and the government itself, because they are living on carbon taxation. That can be one of the factors coming into the play. And the other one will be having the equity financing from the people. That helps more effectively. That can be two-faced solution, because it also deals with the citizens view, and that can also be politically more appropriate, and that will help the overall growth. So I think with these two facets, which has a large sum of money with them, like as I just mentioned, I think it is feasible to do this in 10 years and even earlier, I guess, because when the emotions of citizens come into the play, the all the players in making the whole plan work becomes more efficient, and I think that can work.
Am I allowed to add questions to this?
Uh, no, we'd like to take further questions
Okay.
from
All right, thank you.
Aware, Churan. I'd like to take a question from Team Aware.
Yeah, thanks. I have questions to Planet Earth. Can you hear me?
Planet Earth.
Yes, we'll take the question.
Okay, you go on.
Yeah, I have two questions because on many issues, restrictive measures can be oppressive and hard to quantify, such as I policy that you want to control the birth rate. So I have two questions. First, how to make sure it works, and what are the alternatives of your policies? And second, how to quantify and ensure your accuracy? Yeah, that's all.
May I ask accuracy in terms of what?
That's your funding.
May I answer this question? Can you hear me?
That means how you make sure your policies works.
Okay, so first of all, for you ask how we are gonna make sure that this policy is gonna work. So actually, in the medical field, we can only promote. We can't actually like force people to not get pregnant and have children, but we can promote to them to show that having a child at this crucial time is not a good thing. And there are actually a lot of things that might happen if you get pregnant in this situation. First of all, you will endanger the mother and also the child because of the risk of malnutrition and also the air pollution that can make a lot of problems in the pregnancy. The child can have congenital disease. They can die in their mother's womb and all that. That's why we can only promote to the people that uh, we are actually hoping that they will lower the birth rate. And as for the accuracy, I don't really get the question. Like you are asking about the accuracy of what?
Marina, I think I can add to that.
Okay.
So for accuracy of funding, it's already mentioned in the Excel spreadsheet that Grainland has a 13% healthcare budget. We're going to be taking it from there because it's under the assumption that Grainland probably already has some sort of planned parenthood program that's already pretty common like all around the world. We're just going to be allocating a little bit more into that, so the socialization of Planned Parenthood and contraceptive devices will be more efficient and more effective.
Can I add to that as well?
Half a minute, you can add to that, but just in 30 seconds.
Okay, I program, birth weight program from the ones that was implemented in China, where you can only sort of like give birth to like I think one child per family. This is very different. We're encouraging, we are not mandating. So it's still up to the decision of each household on how they should conduct the future of their own family, you know. But we recommend that that you should do this, but we are not mandating it. Thank you.
All right. I have just one question from Team Planet Earth. They talk about microalgae as an alternative source of fuel and to replace it with conventional fossil fuel to be used in vehicles. I'd like to ask for vehicles to be compatible with biodiesel fuel. R&D needs to be carried out, and how will the government of Greenland manage to fund the R&D sector to develop those cars or develop those automotive manufacturing setup where we have vehicles which are compatible with biodiesel? Because even if we have a viable large scale production of biodiesel, it is useless if the current commodities or the current SBUs in the market, they are not compatible with that mode of fuel.
Thank you for the question, and I'm going to answer the question. So the first question about whether it's compatible with cars, it's that yes, these microalgae fuel will be compatible with cars as seen in the real world right now. And they will be compatible with cars because they are first of all, they will be blended. So it's not going to be pure neat biodiesel, although in the long term, they will be we will be proposing 100% neat biodiesel. It's a stepwise process. As we can see that in the past, we start with 5%, and then we also started with 20%. And an example would be there is this microalgae called a chlorella protodecoides microalgae, and it is a B20, so it's a 20% mix of microalgae fuel, and it can fuel trucks, and there is no necessary modifications needed to such vehicles. And second, about the funding, it's that actually creating such microalgae projects will not be as costly as compared to other renewable sources. And second, in fact, microalgae can be a profitable project because we can also resort to other revenue sources. We can also sell their biolipids, and we can also resort to proteins for animal feed. So all the while, the microalgae project will be a profitable and economically feasible project. Thank you.
I think that culminates the session for question and answer. And before we move on to the concluding speeches, I would like to conclude this today's second debate session for the environment scenario. And in this debate, we had seen some radical goals and some radical ideas for alternate energy. There were talks about nuclearization, starting a nuclear program, different sorts of nuclear reactors like molten salt reactor. That's the first time we've heard that come up for a developing country. And we also had microalgae as an alternate source fuel devised by planet Earth. So the overall debate was better, but the crux of the scenario given to the participants was the emissions problem that is at the root of all the problems. For example, the health and all the secondary issues that are coming up arising because of the emissions and global warming taking place. So as long as the root cause is not addressed or dealt with, symptomatic aid or welfare are meaningless because they're not sustainable, and the government will end up losing quite a lot of money and allocating a lot of budget on welfare initiatives, which will not last long because the situation will keep deteriorating because the industry that needs it. We heard talk about electrifying the transportation sector, green transportation based on hydrogen fuel. All of those ideas are theoretically very good, but as far as the hydrogen fuel is concerned, the source for hydrogen fuel is the tricky part. Fuel cells technology are being thoroughly researched on these days, but the question is, where do you find hydrogen fuel? Is it water splitting? Because water split is not energy-wise viable. And similarly, other ideas. There was talk about carbon trading, and as long as we don't have a clear alternate energy source, carbon trading and curbing and regulating the industrial sector would only uh, make the government unpopular and make the industry ineffective and inefficient. Uh, there was no specific initiative for air quality improvement, which is instrumental and fundamental for improvement in the agriculture sector. There was only talk about soil quality improvement and the coastal areas being drowned. That problem was addressed. But I saw that more of the focus of the participants was towards the secondary or tertiary issues that are occurring because of the fundamental issue, and the fundamental issue being itself left out. But overall, the quality of the debate and the ideas brought forward were good. There are quite a few questions still going on in my mind, but because of shortage of time, I cannot put them forward. This is a long discussion, and this has been a very productive discussion. I would just like to invite the teams for their concluding speeches now in the reverse order as they presented before. So the last team to present their presentation would be the first for their concluding speech, which is Planet.
All right, so should I start now? Okay. Distinguished professors, members of the committee, and fellow participants. 51 years ago, Greenland failed to recognize the importance of environmental crisis. And since then, just like domino effect, a number of crises emerged. That is why we, as policymakers, feel the urge to create concrete change effective immediately. First, the atmosphere has continued to amass with pollutants and carbon dioxide to the condition where people of Greenland have to wear masks. The problem with pollution is not only related to the atmosphere, but to the health of the people of Greenland as well. Respiratory-related diseases have threatened the lives of the people in Greenland. And to prevent it from further happening, Greenland has to resort to a cleaner alternative energy source, microalgae. Second, an increase of carbon dioxide emissions, as well as other greenhouse gases, consequently leads to global warming and climate change. And that is where our Climate Change Act comes to action. Clean development mechanism projects, national forests, and urban parks all together tackle climate change issues by sequestering the greenhouse gas emissions, also answering foreign pressure from the Beijing Protocol. Third, to protect the remaining forest areas that threaten biodiversity, we propose the construction of conservation parks and the initiation of the One, Two, Three program park. This will suppress the irresponsibility of companies and instead require them to give back to planet Earth. Next, we have our Agriculture Act, which consists of four main points: reducing agriculture inputs, intercropping, crop rotations, and cover crops, and hydroponic community gardens. Altogether, with our food security policy, we ensure that all citizens are granted access to equal supply food and adequate nutrition because our nation is our people. Lastly, the aforementioned environmental protection efforts need to correspond with the economic development and growth of the nation. Our economic and taxation policies at the same time build the prerequisites to make long-term sustainability a feasible idea. And in addition to policy, we have also come up with innovation. First, our Save to Be Safe campaign invites and encourages every single one of us to conserve energy. We believe that educating the public on practical ways of conserving energy in households and offices, their behavior on energy consumption will change. In the long run, we hope that the Save to Be Safe campaign would also ease Greenland's transition to a sustainable source of energy. To solve the issues addressed by food scarcity and food waste, as well as inequality in the social side. The two campaigns provide quick and direct effect to the communities in all parts of Greenland. So the question is not when do we need or whether we need to act. Facts have been laid out for us. The question now is how we need to respond to these changes before the effects are irreversible. Our policies and innovations will have a profound impact on our people, our nation, and even our earth that we live not just to our generation, but for many generations to come. People assume protecting the environment can accelerate economic growth, but our policies have proven them wrong. Through our policies, we have made environmental protection and economic growth now. Our solutions are quick, practical, and concrete, all to which answer the problems for the nation. We are convinced through 10 of our policies, bold changes will occur in Greenland. It will require all of us, we mean all of us, to do our part. Because this is a collective responsibility, not just the government, not just corporations, but every single entity in Greenland. And that is what distinguishes our policy. What is a nation without its people? We put the people first. A good society puts the quality of life of its citizens at the forefront of its agenda. Each citizen also has a dual responsibility, both for themselves and the nation, as the success of our policies depend on the collaboration of every entity in the nation. We also did not forget that a good society ultimately achieves a balance of economic viability, environmental protection, and social. These three pillars are the values that we hope Greenland incorporates in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your speech. Next up, we have the team Carrizio
Yes.
for the concluding speech.
Can we start?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, my name is Cheyenne, representative of Creditso, and these last 5 minutes, I will summarize the nature of our policies and innovations, as well as concluding our stance toward where we, as country, are heading. We believe in a transparent society that is efficient and open-minded, a society that is led by people that take care for and nurture the environment and who are willing to take the necessary steps to make the past wrongs right. Our goal is to create a civil economy, which is an economy where incentives are not solely based on self-regarding preferences or profit maximization, but also well-being, virtue, and responsibility, where social dilemmas can be overcome. In order to attain this goal, the main challenge is building institutional transparency. People should be able to see freely what institutions have been doing and what they're planning to do. Transparency will result in people having the freedom to information, which enforces their trust in the authorities and their commitment when policies and changes are implemented. Our core values, integrity, trust, and community, represent the healthy relationships between each stakeholder of our society. The public policies enacted by representatives of the people function to facilitate and reinforce the core values and the social norm. A wealthy nation is not only built by high economic growth and development, in the end, a country is as wealthy as its people are, and wealthy people need to be free and protected, both mentally and physically. Therefore, we have constructed various policies to help assist the people, as well as innovations to accelerate the availability of renewable resources. We aim for accelerating the availability of resources that can replace fossil fuels that are now main source of generated energy and at the same time discouraging usage of the existing fossil fuels. It goes without saying, there is no opportunity for cleaning the environmental mess with the tap open. Therefore, the focus of 6 over 10 policies lies in changing from carbon to other forms of energy. Our remaining policies are targeting the problems created by natural disasters and focus on agricultural revival, water management, climate control, and the welfare of our people, as discussed in detail by my colleagues earlier. From the ideation perspective, we focus upon more viable short-term solutions. As for the long-term solutions, we believe fusion technology would play the central role. Therefore, our solution involved thorium nuclear reactor as a source of green energy, which is safer and more sustainable from nuclear waste management compared to the uranium counterpart. Further, using blend hydrogen combustion engine and hydrogen-fueled long-haul transportation to bring down the emission from the transportation industry. Lastly, we focus on businesses that target sustainability and food availability, such as oyster cultivation and plant air purifiers, which target the pollution and energy conservation. All in all, we aim to create a mini symbiotic ecosystem. And finally, AI consultancy will assist the existing businesses to transform and thrive, and thereby protecting jobs and volatility in the society. We will now close up our presentation by what you, as audience, might have been eagerly waiting for. What is the meaning behind our name? Our team name Scardizzo is not a random name, but has been chosen with care. What's the meaning of to profit, to gain, or even to save. Therefore, it represents the value of reducing fossil fuels and reducing negative impact to our nation, whilst it carries the meaning of to overcome all natural disasters our country is facing. Not just our country, but that the whole globe is facing with. We are confident that it is possible to grow while still keeping concerned with the globe. International collaboration might be a way to make this happen. Yeah, like international collaboration might provide a way to make this happen. We can think as involving big companies such as Tesla, Hyperloop, and Google, so that in the end, each of us can say, ego creditzo, that is, I overcome. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Shan, for your beautiful speech. And now we have our last team, um, Aware, to make their concluding speech.
Yes, here is Aware. In our eyes, environmental protection is never a one-dimensional affair, and we believe that the most effective way or the most important thing is to raise the environmental awareness of the whole society. So that's where our name comes from. Is aware is short for associate with authority, residents, and enterprises. Also, our solutions may not be so perfect and there will be unexpected obstacles in the real life, but we do take some experience and successful examples from the real life. And in the future, if the technology and people's perceptions will grow, and it may be more suitable for our needs. And come back to our discussion, we are lucky to in such a idealistic scenario where we can both make policies and innovative products. But the truth is, Greenland is developing, and there are so much limitations and obstacles, like where the money come from, and where we can have the technology, and where we can find the resources, and how to implement those great policies. So, in our eyes, the economic growth maybe is number one priority in such developing countries. So we tend to choose some easy but achievable but efficient ways to tackle those existing problems. And we may focus on the control and adjustment. And as we have discussed before, the how we get the energy, how we make the energy transformation. Um, I think it's not the fault of fossil energy, but how to control and use them right. So we may turn to those easy, simple, but efficient measures. For example, we can do something like waste management and the residual garbage could use to be burned and generate electricity. And for those kitchen waste, we can use some technologies such as anaerobic digestion, and we can get both methane and also they can be used to plant some trees or other things. So that's also the reason why we chose to that carbon trading platform. We use the market mechanisms, and we conducted the app to transparent the healthcare and also some environment education to those portable but useful apps. And what's more, we may not be able to afford the cost of failure. So we started with a pilot, which means we will have some pilots in the generation sector. We apply the first generation sector to the carbon trading platform, and we may first apply the extended producer responsibility system in the electrical and vehicles and lead battery sectors. And we also afraid of that how to integrate our policies and apps and the market. So we have supportive measures to both have bottom up and top down measures. And we try to reduce the waste and reduce the pollution from the source. So we have some policies like ecological red line and the permit discharge system, so we can control the pollution and know the information for the waste from the beginning. So that's what talking about, and we just want to make more concern about the real life.
Yeah. Okay, that concludes your time and the speech. Thank you very much for presenting your ideas, all of the teams. And before I declare this session closed, I would like to thank the honorable professors and ask them for their valued opinion on how the participants participated and presented their ideas. Professor Myunga-shin.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch you. You were disconnected briefly.
I would just like the honorable professors to give their concluding remarks on this session of debate, and then we can close the debates.
Well, mine will be very short. I really enjoyed the presentation as well as the discussions. Good jobs.
Yeah. Professor Doshang Lee.
Yes, the same thing from me. Everybody did a great job. I enjoyed the discussion. Thanks.
Okay. Once again, thank you all for dedicating this time to a good cause. And I really believe that this was a really constructive session with you all. And I hope that the best team wins. And I wish all of you best of luck. It was very nice having you all. And for the audience, we will be having another debate session on the same scenario with 3 different teams at 5 p.m. So stay tuned and we'll see you again.
So how many teams will advance to the final?
3 teams will advance to the final.
Out of 9?
Out of 9.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye. It was nice having you.